The death of Anakin's mother and his subsequent slaughter of the Tusken Raiders was one of the most profound moments of Anakin's fall to the dark side. Just as the Jedi had feared, when one has an attachment prior to becoming a Jedi, there is an increased risk of something happening to the loved one, bringing the Jedi and their feelings of hatred for revenge to the surface. For the already stressed Chosen One, this was the straw that broke the back. But while we're familiar with this scene, it's profound for one other reason as well. For this is the first time that Qui-Gon Jinn's presence and voice is heard beyond the grave. During his meditations, we know that Yoda heard the ghostly voice of the apparition, as Qui-Gon was first alerted to him to the prospect of life after death. However, we learned in the Attack of the Clones novelization that so too did Anakin Skywalker hear the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn, specifically during his rampage of the Tuskens, and we know exactly how Anakin dealt with it following. Greetings Acolytes, and welcome back to the archives. Today we are going to be opening up a holocron and discuss what happened when Qui-Gon Jinn's ghost awoke during Anakin's indulgence in the dark side. It should not be understated how much the death of Anakin's mother impacted the young Jedi. For years as a slave, she was all that he knew, the only light in his life. During his training as a Jedi youngling, he was ostracized because of his age, and it took the death of his father figure and prospective mentor Qui-Gon to get the Council to even consider training Anakin in the first place. From day one, he was shunned. Even after this, he was still an outcast. The halls of the Jedi Temple to the young boy seemed cold, and the love and affection that he had received for years from his mother, his greatest light, was now completely absent, and placed upon him was great expectation and unfair fear and hesitance. Because of this, the boy devoted his life to training with the hopes of one day returning to free all of the slaves of Tatooine and rescue his mother from her enslavement from Watto. Anakin would work, struggle, and strive for perfection in his training, going through hardships on many missions just so that he could become good enough to fulfill his promise to his long-lost mother. This is what pushed Anakin. And yet all the same, this is what he heard from the Jedi. Attachments were bad, and there was no place for them in the life of a Jedi Knight. But when the young boy finally has the opportunity to free his mother, he learns that she has been taken by Sand People. Anakin races across the Dune Sea to the Tusken camp, only to find his mother, the woman that did nothing but love him unconditionally, beaten within an inch of her life, the person that meant everything to him, cast aside and discarded for absolutely nothing. She only tells her boy one last time that she loves him before her life quite literally slipped through his fingers. All of the missions, all of the training, all the talk that he had been the Chosen One destined to bring balance to the Force, and Anakin in this moment, it all meant nothing. The sizable emptiness he felt inside when the last person that he truly loved died. The only person he really understood him before Qui-Gon Jinn. That emptiness would only be replaced by a rapidly growing fire, one that burned inside him like lava. Suddenly, the Force would be his ally, but not the Force that the Jedi had taught him, and not the Force that he had known so well. His anger was answered by another entity entirely. And in that moment, where he was truly alone, there was nothing to comfort Anakin but the dark side. The dark side literally answered his call for vengeance and brought him a small amount of hope. Hope that the boy had the power to take from the Tuskens what they had taken from him. In the novelization for Attack of the Clones, we learned that there was only a slight moment of apprehension from Anakin, a small part of him that was true to his Jedi self. A part of his training that told him that what he was experiencing would lead to the dark side. But the rage, the pain, and the unfairness of it all bound and gagged that small voice. And for the first time, the galaxy felt the presence of Darth Vader. The book tells us that Anakin enters a state where he's not even controlling his body. The Force floods through him like a dam breaking open, and his lightsaber moves faster than even his own mind does. In this moment, Anakin isn't focused on the movements of his lightsaber, or how his hands are manipulating the Force. All Anakin can think of is death. This Tusken, then that one. He would allow none of them to escape, even though they ran from him. This agony had such a significant impact on the Force that thousands of light years away, Yoda nearly fell off of his meditation cushion. Yoda, the Grand Master, was unable to focus his thoughts because he was overwhelmed by Anakin's rage and his newfound power. It literally shocked Yoda how strong Anakin was, And in this critical moment, the spirit of Qui-Gon Jinn cried out in the void of the Force, calling for Anakin to stop, begging him. Yoda would hear it too, and it staggered him even more than Anakin's emotions. He tried to search for the source of the ghostly words, but Yoda was once again overwhelmed by Anakin's power, and Yoda could not trace Qui-Gon. But back on Tatooine, the novelization says this. Anakin too had heard the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn imploring him to restrain himself, to deny the rage. He hadn't recognized it though, for he was too full of pain and anger. He spotted a Tusken woman to the side, in front of another of the tents, carrying a pail of dirty water, and saw a Tusken child in the shadows of another nearby hut, staring at him with an incredulous expression. Then he was moving, though he was hardly aware of his actions. Anakin's blade flashed and he ran on. The Tusken woman screamed and was impaled. Right now, Anakin is drunk with the dark side, similarly to how he felt during Order 66, though then it was a more refined control. However, in this moment, the novelization is essentially telling us that Anakin is blacking out. He's barely present, and his own anger has begun to puppet him. Muscle memory takes over as his Jedi training is turned towards wrath and destruction, revenge. And in the midst of all of this, Anakin still hears the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn, though he didn't recognize it. While it was familiar, it had been 9 years since Anakin had been around Qui-Gon and heard his voice. The deep and soothing baritone of the Jedi Master was lost on Anakin in this moment. His thoughts were clouded. Unfortunately, in this novel, we don't get Anakin's later reaction to hearing Qui-Gon's voice, as it is mainly focused on the grief that he's feeling from his mother's death, and his thoughts being clouded. It's unfortunate that Qui-Gon did not master his training under the Force priestesses, or perhaps he could have appeared to Anakin in this moment as a fully formed spirit, begging the boy to stop. Unfortunately, although we don't get any more of Anakin's thoughts in this novel, we do get more in the canon novel Brotherhood. In Brotherhood, it is revealed that Anakin has felt the presence of Qui-Gon ever since this moment on Tatooine, and that Qui-Gon has done his best to stay by Anakin's side and soothe his anger in any way possible, essentially becoming his guardian angel. Many years later, after Anakin was knighted, he would be standing and listening to one of Windu's speeches during a large ceremony for the fresh Jedi Knights. Anakin though spaced out during the speech, and memories of this very event began to dredge in. The emotions ran high, and he was having a difficult time bringing them back down and focusing on the task at hand, seeing the Tuskens in his very mind. But then the novel says this. Another memory arrived with a surprise, one that draped calm over the open wounds of Tatooine. It echoed, a feeling as real as the moment that it first happened. The strong hands of Qui-Gon Jinn on his shoulders, his soothing words whispering in his ears. It wasn't the first time he'd felt the presence of the fallen Jedi, whether a flash of deep memory or one of the Force's great tricks in his favor. The presence always recentered him in a way that Obi-Wan's lectures never did. Qui-Gon Jinn never gave up on Anakin Skywalker, and even though his words would come as vague impressions, Anakin was aware of them. Qui-Gon had a unique way with Anakin that no one else ever did. We know that sometime later, Anakin would even attempt to commune with the spirit of Qui-Gon Jinn, as he could feel his presence, although he did not know how. In this moment, Anakin reached out to the Force and begged Qui-Gon to give him an answer on whether or not he was on the correct path as the Chosen One, believing that Qui-Gon was the last individual in the entire galaxy that believed in him. As Anakin meditated, nothing would respond, but this still did not discourage the young Anakin, who believed that Qui-Gon Jinn remaining silent was in fact confirmation that he was on the right path. If Qui-Gon was out there at all, at the time at least, he was pleased with Anakin. But now, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on how Qui-Gon continued to guide Anakin, even though the young Skywalker could not see him? What are your thoughts on Anakin hearing the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn in this moment, awaking Qui-Gon's spirit? Thank you as always so much for watching the channel, my friends. Hit that subscribe button, and may the Force be with you.